welcome back to my channel Android Tuts. In this tutorial we will learn about what is a function, advantages and rules for PHP function, create a user defined function, and I will also cover types of PHP function like function arguments, function default argument value, PHP call by reference, and function returning values. Let's talk about what is a function. A function is a block of statements that can be used repeatedly in a program. A function will not execute it immediately when page is loaded. Function will be executed by call to the function. It is a reusable piece or a block of code that can perform a specific task. Function can either return value when called or can simply perform an operation without returning any value. Let's talk about advantages of PHP function. First is code reusability. PHP functions are defined only once and can be invoked many times like in other programming languages. Second is less code. It saves a lot of code because you do not need to write the logic many times. By the use of function, you can write the logic only once and reuse it. Third is easy to understand. PHP functions separate the programming logic, so it is easier to understand the flow of the application because every logic is divided into the form of the function. Then after, rules for PHP function. First is, function name must start with a letter or underscore but not a number. Second is, the function name must be unique. Third is, the function name must not contain a space. Fourth is, it is considered a good practice to use descriptive function names. Fifth is, function can optionally accept parameters and return values too. Then after, create a user-defined function in PHP. Syntax of PHP function. Let's now create our first function. We will create a very basic function that illustrates the major component of a function in PHP. First of all, to create one PHP file, function.php. Let's start writing a code. Function keyword define is the function block that tells PHP that you are defining a custom function. Add underscore numbers is the function name that will be called when using the function. Function names are not case sensitive. Here, you can be used to pass parameter to the function. This is the definition of the function. This is the declaration of the function. Save the code. Let's run the program. The output of the code will be 3. Let's talk about PHP function arguments. Information can be passed to the function through argument. An argument is just like a variable. Arguments are specified after the function name. Inside the parenthesis, you can add as many arguments as you want. Just separate them with comma. Let's see the demo example of PHP function argument. Here, the value of x is 5 and the value of y is 10. Save the code. Let's run the program. The output of the code will be 15. Let's talk about PHP default argument value. When creating a function in PHP, it is possible to provide default parameters so that when a parameter is not passed to the function, it is still available within the function with a predefined value. This default value can also be called optional parameter because they do not need to be passed to the function. Let's see the demo example of PHP default argument value. Creating a default parameter in a function is very simple and is quite like normal variable assignment. At that time, default argument value function can be called. Save the code. Let's run the program. The output of the code will be 14. This is the output of the default argument value function. Second is 15. This is the output of the function argument. Let's talk about PHP call by reference. Call by value means passing the value directly to a function. The call function uses the value in a local variable. Any change to do it not affect the source variable. Call by reference means passing the address of variable where the actual value is stored. The call function uses the value stored in the pass address. Any change to do affect the source variable. Let's see the example of PHP call by reference. By default, value passed to the function is call by value. To pass value as a reference, you need to use ampersand symbol before the argument name. Save the code. Let's run the program. The output of the code will be 30. Let's talk about PHP function returning value. A function can return a value using the return statement in conjunction with a value or object. Return stop the execution of the function and send the value back to the calling code. Let's see the example of PHP function returning value. Save the code. Let's run the program. The output of the code will be 15.